with our favorite segment of all time. We call it a take for 99, where we give you a very expensive take for a cheap price in all of sports. I am looking forward to this segment, obviously. Zach, I'll give you the mic to begin.
Yes, well, I'm going to stay in the NFL for this one, and it's a complex take with a few layers, but I'm excited to talk about this. So training camp is underway. Of course, it's been a few weeks, and, we're all dialed in. We're reading all the beat reporters, reading all the reports coming out of camp, and when it comes to the quarterback position, like usually I feel like there's at least a quarterback battle or two we could focus on and say, okay, this is the biggest storyline we're watching coming out of training camp. But the Giants named Russell Wilson their starter pretty early. Like, honestly, the most intriguing quarterback competition is the Colts with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson. And to be honest, no matter who wins that competition, it's not really going to affect my opinion on the Colts. So the point is, these quarterback competitions are kind of underwhelming. Like, that's not really my number one focus in training camp right now. But really, if you've been tracking the news, the biggest storylines we've been getting so far coming out of training camp in these last few weeks is these contract negotiations, right? There have been some guys like Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, Rashawn Slater with the Chargers, TJ Watt with the Steelers, guys that have signed and have been locked up long term. But there's some other guys like a Terry McLaurin with Washington, like a Micah Parsons with Dallas that are still unsigned. And usually throughout the last few years, we've seen this song and dance with Nick Bosa as a player that comes to mind, Brandon Ayuk last year with the 49ers. Like, we've seen some major holdouts, but most of the time, 99% of the time, I'd say these players end up getting paid. And it's a lot to do about nothing. These teams know that they just can't afford to go into a season without these guys. And I do think Terry McLaurin is going to sign with Washington. He better, or else that team's in trouble. Same with Micah Parsons and the Cowboys. But, there is one player that's holding out right now. He's actually just reported, so technically he's holding in, that I'm concerned. And I do think if anyone's getting traded, it might be this guy. And, that's Trey Hendrickson with the Bengals. And this is a problem because when you look at the Bengals, I see them getting grouped into, like, this tier at the top of the AFC with Kansas City and Buffalo and the Ravens as like possible Super Bowl contenders. And I don't see it, Lil. I don't really understand why. Joe Burrow had probably the best year he will ever have last year. He was unbelievable. Jamar Chase, same thing. They bring back T. Higgins, which is great. But this team scored 30 points every other game, and it didn't matter because their defense was so bad. And their big change was swapping defensive coordinators. Of course, they drop Lou Anarumo and they hire Al Golden, Notre Dame defensive coordinator. I think he did a great job last year. But Lou Anarumo is a guy that got this team. He was a big part of it, that defense, getting them to the Super Bowl. He put together a great game plan in the playoffs that really had Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense flustered. I don't think he just forgot how to coach defense. As a matter of fact, the Colts just picked him up. I think the Colts defense is going to be much improved with him. So the personnel on this defense stinks. And that was with Trey Hendrickson, who had 17 and a half sacks last year. And I don't know like what the Bengals are doing. They have to pay this guy. They need him or else they're screwed. And I was thinking about, okay, if the Bengals do trade him, because I'm just done giving this team the benefit of the doubt. Like, I don't think it's a guarantee they pay him. They're historically a cheap organization. They paid Burrow. They paid Chase. They paid Higgins. Are they going to pay another guy big money? I'm not sure. And I was thinking about where could he go? And the team that came to mind to me was actually their quarterback. He just popped up in your rankings, and that's why I didn't mention him. It's the Packers. I think when you look at Green Bay, they're in a unique spot because there's some pressure to win right now. Despite the fact that they got to the playoffs the last 2 years, they're a little bit disappointed in especially how last season went. And there was that report, I brought it up, I think the last time we recorded a few weeks ago, that Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst did not get extended. So they have some pressure going into this season. And the thing about the Packers is they have a lot of really good players, but they don't have that many great players. They need an impact guy. And I think after going over all my concerns with the Lions and everything they lost, I do think the door is kind of wide open for this Green Bay team to win the NFC North this year. I have my concerns about Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson together, that first year pairing. J.J. McCarthy, I'm not that sold. I need to see him prove it first. I love Kevin O'Connell, but I don't know if J.J. McCarthy is going to be able to replicate what Sam Darnold did last year. So I think Green Bay needs to make a move. I like their draft. The one guy you didn't mention when it came to their receivers is Matthew Golden, first-round wide receiver from Texas. I think that's going to be the guy that steps into that number one wide receiver role. I think he's going to have a really nice season. I was impressed with Josh Jacobs last year. He proved to me that he's still a legitimate player in this league. Their offensive line is good. They locked up their right tackle, Zach Tom. McKinney was a great signing on defense. Also, Jeff Hafley, he did a great job in his first year as a defensive coordinator. I think this Packers team is close, and I am very close to picking them to win the NFC North over the Detroit Lions. And I'm not really been someone that have been as sold on Green Bay the last few years, but I think I'm going to buy low a little bit. I want to pick them to win this division, but they are just missing one big impact guy. I think Trey Hendrickson would be that guy. And if I'm them, I'd be willing to give up multiple firsts. He's a legitimate impact player, 17 and a half sacks last year. And again, I just don't know why the Bengals are being grouped into the tier of Super Bowl contenders. Their defense was terrible last year, and I don't see why it's all of a sudden going to get better magically. As a matter of fact, I love T. Higgins as a player. I think he's very good. But I do wonder if they regret a little bit paying him, and maybe they could have used a little bit of that money to pay a Trey Hendrickson, maybe add more to that defense. Because when you have Joe Burrow, when you have Jamar Chase, you know that offense is going to be good no matter what. Joe Burrow is good enough where he can make other weapons around Chase better. So I do wonder if they're having some regrets there. I don't know if the Bengals are going to pay Trey Hendrickson, and that is my concern. Green Bay should be the first team knocking on that door.
Yeah, definitely. I do think that when you talk about the Bengals, they are I want to start off with them before I go to your actual take of the Packers making a potential trade for, a guy like Henderson, obviously a very good player, a franchise-altering move. It could potentially be. But we start off with the Bengals, and look, they made their bet and now they laying in it. They have always been a cheap franchise. They paid their big star wide receivers, though, and I think they prioritized the offensive side of the ball. And that's what that decision to extend T. Higgins and Jamar Chase meant. Me personally, I always think you go for balance because as we saw last year, when your offense is great, but your defense is not ideal at all, you miss the playoffs. I don't really know what the Bengals are trying to do because right now Joe Burrow's career is being wasted. First it was the offensive line, now it's the defense. It's unfortunate. Lamar Jackson always had a good defense. Always. That's why he won MVPs. That's why he is winning a couple playoff games because he always had a good defense. That's why he won a lot in the regular season because he had a good defense. Okay, Patrick Mahomes has always had a good defense for the most part. If it was average, it's now above average the last couple of years. Okay, that's why he's won championships. Okay, so at the end of the day, Joe Burrow is being devoid of something very important, and losing Hendrickson is not going to make that any more less than ideal than it already is. Okay, so I do believe that if they can pay him, if they can, they need to figure that out. It's not going to make their defense significantly better because we saw it last year. They were bad, but that is their best player. That's a guy that led the team in sacks last year. So you obviously want to bring him back. As far as the Packers is concerned, I do think that would be a great move for them because they are sneakily dangerous, as you alluded to. The moves that they made, McKinney, the safety McKinney, obviously bolstering your secondary, obviously the drafting of Golden from Texas, right? They're right there. They've been a playoff team. They've been knocking at the door like a salesman. And now it's time for them to, progress and get over that hump. Yeah, they've been the youngest football team in the National Football League the last couple of years, and they're still going to be a young football team. Get a veteran game changer on the defensive side of the ball that can absolutely wreck a game, that can absolutely get to the quarterback, sack the quarterback, cause a fumble. And I like that. I like that team that you picked there. And we do know them to be another cheap head. So that's the only liability there is that you got one cheap franchise and another cheap franchise. But they have been adding talent. Josh Jacobs was a good addition last year for them. So this will only put a bow into those transactions and get them a legitimate shot to potentially come out and, potentially play in the Super Bowl. Who knows? There was a lot of teams trendy pick last year to win the Super Bowl or get there. I was one of them, right? They let me down, make that move, get better, and try to compete. I like it.
So you brought that up about LaFleur. I'm curious. Go into a little more detail about that. You didn't like his play calling last year?
Last year, I didn't think he did a good job at play calling. And a lot of it, too, and I want to be very clear here. I don't want to misspeak. Some of it, maybe half of it, had to do with Jordan Love's injury because he got injured week 1. He never was settled, never looked like he was settled to me. And I watched the Packers. He never felt comfortable in the pocket. And because of that, they ran a lot of shotgun because you don't have to obviously take as much steps back as you would playing, under center. So I do think Jordan Love's injury played a part, but also where was the sweeps like from 2 years ago? Where was the play action? Not a lot of it, and that's mainly because he's from the shotgun. So you're not going to do a lot of play action from the shotgun. So I do think we'll see what happens with Jordan Love healthy if Matt LaFleur can get back in his bag because he's normally a good play caller. That's one thing we can give that man. But last year I didn't really think that his team did a good job of protecting the football, playing ahead like they did the year before, and I think that was why they were playing behind the 8 ball and why they were down so many points early on in games. The Lions game, as a prime example, they came back in that game. They lost that game. I believe it was a Thursday night, but they were trailing a couple touchdowns before they got back in the game. They never got off the good starts last year, and that played a role in why their season ended the way it did.
Yeah, and I just find it interesting that it seems like there's some pressure on LaFleur. Like, they're obviously expecting some big things. LaFleur, I think he's been very good, but you just wonder if he's the right coach that could get them over the hump if they're trying to win championships. This team moved on from Aaron Rodgers when they were consistently going to NFC championship games, making deep playoff runs, and Jordan Love has shown some flashes, but this is going to be his 3rd year starting, 5th year in the league. It's time for him to make a go. And I just want to repeat this. Like, the NFC North is a wide open division. As much respect as I have for the Lions, I don't think they're just some shoe-in team to win the division based on everything they lost. Chicago and Minnesota, to me, are both huge question marks. And I think the door is open finally for Green Bay to finally take that division crown. But it's up to them. Can they finally make that leap? And by the way, the Lions go to Lambeau Field week 1. America's game of the week to start the season. That should be a good one.
And before I get to my take, I just want to briefly go over just 2 of those holdouts real quickly. Look, I'm not going to say too much about Terry McLaurin. I think that gets done. Even though the reports try to scare you, oh, they're not close, those are smoke screens. It's going to get done. If the Commanders are serious about being a legitimate franchise, with the way they had last year happen for them and all the positive energy, the trendy picks to represent in the Super Bowl, the trendy picks for their quarterback to win an MVP, you signed Terry McLaurin, a guy that's been consistent year to year with ineptitude quarterback play. Now he has a guy. He's a vocal leader. He's a captain of that team. You bring him back. I think they will. I think they know that. I think it will get done sooner rather than later. Micah Parsons, again, not too much to worry about there. It's going to get done. We cannot look at the Cowboys the same way we do any other football team. We got to look at them differently. This is not a team purely football. We look at them. It always is Jerry Jones trying to get the media to talk. That's why it's almost like LeBron James. When LeBron James get in front of a press conference and a mic, he says something for a reason behind it, right? He wants something done. Jerry Jones, when he comes out and he calls out Micah Parsons for being hurt and Dak Prescott, he's doing it for a reason. Headlines. When he hires the guy he hires, headlines, okay? When he take long to pay the guys he needs to pay, headlines. Oh, you take along with Ezekiel Elliott. It got done, though, right? You take along with Dak Prescott. It got done, right? Twice, right? Yeah, you take along to sign CeeDee Lamb, the 11th hour. It got done, right? Same thing will happen with Micah Parsons. He will get paid eventually. The question would be more so when.
Yeah, one comment on McLaurin. I do find it interesting. So the Commanders trade for Deebo Samuel, who's making a decent amount of money. Adam Peters, their GM, was actually in San Francisco when they drafted Deebo. So they have a pretty good relationship. And that dynamic kind of fascinates me. Like, if you're Terry McLaurin, you said it all. Like, Terry's been with that team for a really long time through inept quarterback play. And all of a sudden, they trade for a guy that's making more money than Terry is. And they don't want to pay Terry right now. And obviously, McLaurin is a key piece to that team. He wants a lot of money, though. He wants to be paid like a top 7, top 8 wide receiver in the league. And ultimately, I think Washington will attest to that. But this isn't ideal. The fact that you had so much positive momentum coming out of last season and in training camp going into the month of August, the biggest storyline going on with that team right now is McLaurin and his contract situation. I'm not saying it's a distraction, but it kind of is. They got to get it done. And I'm not saying that they're going to trade him or anything, but we've seen, even if they don't get it done, he's going to play. We don't have any more Le'Veon Bell situations, but it just provides negative vibes. And I don't like that with this team, considering how much positive momentum they had coming out of last season. And Adam Peters, being a GM is a tough gig. He's walking into work and fans are bombarding him with pay Terry signs and pay Terry chants. They want to get done. And I just don't think this is an ideal situation to have going into the offseason based on how great he was and how great last year went.
All I know is, and this is my last point on it, once that bag gets distributed, it's going to be all smiles. Terry McLaurin is going to be smiling from ear to ear. They're going to act like it never happened. Him and the owner, everybody's going to be holding hands, singing Kumbaya. Okay? And I think that's what's going to happen eventually. Like, again, the question will be when. But, yeah, I agree, though. I do think you don't want this distraction. But, Jaden Daniels is a mature quarterback. You got mature veterans in that locker room. That's something I like about this team. And what I liked about it last year is that they had veteranship. They have veteranship, right? They have guys that been there in the playoffs, like Bobby Wagner. Von Miller just signed over there. He brings a lot of pedigree, championship pedigree. You have Eckler, playoff pedigree. You got all those guys there that can, rally up the guys and allow them to focus and preach the certainty or the necessity it is to block out the noise. And a lot of teams don't have that. Imagine this be the youngest team in the NFL, like the Packers, for a prime example, and that was happening. It would be a problem. So I do think this team have enough veterans, and they have a good quarterback that brings good leadership for it to withstand these couple of days of intense negotiations that obviously I do think will come to a resolution sooner rather than later. And Zach, I'm going to go ahead with my take for 99. I want to move it to the NBA for this one. And the reason why I want to move to the NBA is because we haven't did this show in a couple of weeks. There's some points that I want to get to, and it's in regards to Damian Lillard. Kinda, he's the centerpiece of this take. My take is don't follow the crowd. Chase purpose, not rings. Okay? You see the term ring culture, right? And I'm not talking about wedding rings. I'm talking about championship rings. Is it used to describe ring culture as a culture of superstars leaving their respective franchises to team up with all the stars in pursuit of championships. Okay, outside of LeBron James, Zach, and I know you know this, and maybe Kevin Durant joining a 73 win Warriors team, super team building, ring chasing hasn't always proven to be effective for players of Dame's caliber. You see, for a moment, Bradley Beal and Dame portrayed this act of being a hero in a supervillain movie until they secured their contracts and allowed the media to bully them into taking part of this ring culture. Okay? And look, it could have had turned out worse for Bradley Beal and Damian Lillard. Okay? Bradley Beal requested a trade to the Suns following the crowd. My mama always told me be a leader, not a follower. And I've always been a leader all my life. Okay? But Damian Lillard wanted to be a follower, and he requested a trade to the Suns, hoping that he could play with D-Book and Durant so they could win a championship. And guess what? They didn't even win the playoff series. Guess what? They didn't even make the playing game last year. Okay? And guess what? He just agreed to a buyout with the Suns after that terrible partnership to join NBA Hospice, which is the Clippers, with all them old veteran guys over there. Okay? I call it NBA Hospice. Okay? And Dame, what happened with Dame? Where Dame at? He wanted to go to the Bucks, teaming up with Giannis. Woohoo! We're going to win a championship. Oh, really? Well, guess what, folks? If you was in a coma, you may not know. He's back in Portland, okay? 2 seasons later, ostensibly to rehab his Achilles that he suffered while on the Bucks. It couldn't go even worse, right? When you add that into consideration, hopefully he gets better. I don't mean it to jab at his foot. I mean it to say it has been terrible, right? Ostensibly admitting that he was not good enough to lead a team to a championship, even as a sidekick. It's sad, Zach. Everybody's saying, oh, Damian Lillard coming back to Portland. Woohoo! This is a good story. No, it's sad. It's very sad. 2 years later, after you done requested a trade, okay, you playing with Giannis and you back in Portland after you done followed the crowd. You proved to be, you was trying to be this hero, going on podcasts, ring culture this, ring culture that. It's terrible. I'm not going to be like LeBron James. I'm not going to be like Kevin Durant. Okay. All right. What happened? You allowed the media to bully you. You wasn't a leader. You was a follower. And now you came back, and to me, sad. It's embarrassing that he's in Portland right now. And I know I may have a difference in opinion compared to others, but to me, it's sad. Give me the box of tissues, please. Okay? Because the media narrative, okay, they portrayed loyalty as a negative thing. But guess what? It's not. Because the consequences of following the crowd by ring chasing proved to be far greater of risk in the end. And that's my take for 99.
Okay, so when I heard this Dame news coming back to Portland, there was one thought that came to my mind, and it's in a completely different direction than yours that I want to explain, and then I'll address what you had to say because I think you make some interesting points. I feel like the Miami Heat missing out on Damian Lillard is a turning point in their franchise's history that they're still regretting, and it honestly might not be something that they could recover from. Because if you remember, that team had just gone to the NBA Finals for the second time in 4 years. They went to the conference finals 3 times in 4 years during that stretch with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. And it was clear that that team just needed one bucket getter to really push them over the hump. And Damian Lillard wanted to go there. He honestly mishandled it, that he said, trade me to Miami and nowhere else. And that put some thought into Pat Riley's mind that he had the leverage and that Portland, that was going to be their only choice. I think that it made sense for Portland to trade Dame, whether he wanted to leave or not. That team was terrible. They were about to draft Scoot Henderson with the number 2 pick. They should have cashed out their chips on Dame. I don't blame them for trading him if he wanted to go or not. The problem is the Dame Giannis combination in Milwaukee, it didn't work. Now, you could say part of it was the two guys' styles just wouldn't go together. I just think the Bucks did a poor job building around them, and they fired Mike Budenholzer right before. They hired Adrian Griffin. That was a hire that didn't work, and then it was all burned to hell when they hired Doc Rivers. Like, as soon as they did that, you knew they weren't going to be a serious contender. But I think Portland should have traded Dame. They were about to rebuild. They got some good assets back, right? Avdia is a good player. They got him. They used the picks they got back for Dame in that. They traded that for him. And then they also got Tumani Kamara, a young player that I really like, really good defender. And I think Portland could be a sneaky, solid playing team this year with Drew Holiday. Who knows? But that's the thing that makes this dynamic so complicated is Dame is going to be out all of this season, most likely. Maybe he comes back for the playoffs. But, yeah, if I was him, I probably would have signed with a contender. I'm not saying, I'm not saying sign with OKC and be a true ring chaser, but I think Minnesota was a team that would have made a ton of sense for him. Boston, it would have been, he's friends with Jason Tatum. Both those guys rehabbing off the Achilles. I thought that would have been a solid fit. So I do agree with your overall point. It's sad that he signed with Portland. It seemed to me that he just wanted to go back because he likes living there, wanted to be closer to his kids, which is fine. But it's clear that championships aren't his number one priority. And I'm not saying you should ring chase, but the fact that he didn't sign with a team that's even a contender it's a disappointment. And the one thing I keep coming back to is Miami just completely missed the ball. Pat Riley is a legend, one of the best executives in the history of basketball. But I think that could be a decision that, costs him the next few years. And I think most legends, when it ends for them, it doesn't end great. Miami was so close. That team made the NBA Finals twice in 4 years. And, of course, since they've traded Jimmy Butler, I love Tyler Hero as a player, but I don't think he's good enough to be a number one on a championship team. He has too many deficiencies. Same thing with Bam Adebayo. Really good player, but if he's your number one, you don't have a chance. I think if you would have paired Dame 2 years ago with Jimmy and Bam, that team could have won a championship. I do believe that and will believe that until I die. But Miami missed the ball. That was my number one takeaway with this Dame news, considering he literally said, I want to go to Miami and nowhere else. And the Heat couldn't get it done.
I mean, look, you raise valid, what ifs when you talk about Miami and what could have been. I do think that if they had Dame on the team, maybe they go and come out of the East. The East is not as strong as the other conference, and I get it. And look, when you add that championship pedigree that they had and that championship culture, yeah, you expect great things from a seasoned vet that you adding into that, ecosystem who has won in the playoffs, who has carried a franchise a couple of times, and I get it. But the reality is, the point that I'm making here with this take is that it's sad that he ended up back here, because even though people want to spin the narrative as if it's cool, I'm not going to forget how nasty it got because you decide to follow the crowd. I'm not going to forget the videos and podcasts that you went on talking about you not for wing culture. That's hypocritical. That's like me saying, yeah, I don't want to use this as as an example, but it's like me saying I don't like Chinese women and I end up with a Chinese woman. Okay, like come on, and I don't got nothing against Chinese women, but I'm using that as an example. It's like somebody saying I don't like Chinese women and ended up with a Chinese woman. It's like freaking MLK ending up with the Ku Klux Klan. Okay, like really? Okay, so at the end of the day, you went on a podcast and said I'm against ring culture, and yet you partook in it. And not only did you partake in it, right? Because what's done is done. I'm not harping on something that happened a couple years ago. You made that decision. It happened, and been there. It happened. Move on, right? But I'm bringing it up because you ended up back where you should have stayed. That's why I'm bringing it up. And if not, if you would have went to Boston, I won't be having this take. Because at the end of the day, you took part in the culture. Why not stick to it? Why not go to Boston? Jason Tatum is rehabbing his Achilles. You are as well. We have together. This team knows how to win. They've been winning for the better part of this whole entire decade. Why not go and continue what you just started? Why end up back to Portland to prove what? What are you trying to prove, Dame? Okay, because you went with this narrative that you was against ring culture. You tried to be the Spider-Man in a villain movie, and you broke that code. It didn't work. Why come back? That's my question. That's why it's sad to me. While everybody's happy, Dame is back. And sure, from a basketball perspective, I like the Portland Trail Blazers and what they have been doing under Chauncey Billups and the improvement that I see with their players. And with Dame coming over there, who knows? But it don't make no sense to me at all, especially this stage of his career. Is the championship still a goal, or is it proving something? What are you trying to prove?
It's clearly not. And I really just think he missed living in Portland. He missed the organization. He had his great moments there. And the whole Milwaukee experiment didn't work. And I don't think you could pin that all on him. The Bucks hiring Doc Rivers and AJ Griffin were two big mistakes. But at the end of the day, I just don't think he's built for it. And it's unfortunate. I think Portland should have traded him earlier, honestly. They kept him too long. And I agree. It's sad.
And it's sad that we're going to end this show. But there's always next week. And Zach, I'm looking forward to the next show that we do. It was a good one, and I'm looking forward to the next.
Absolutely. Have a great night, my guy. Always a good
time.
You
too, my guy. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back next week. We out. Peace.